Far Cry 7's cast and narrative outline has leaked.
Has it?
Now, this is something that I didn't detail to you before we started recording, because what they seem to be building is is insane. We have a whole bunch of characters described here and what seems like thematics of the story. This is Far Cry mixed with Succession. It's such an Ubisoft thing to look at what works and then do their version of it. But I
wasn't expecting that. Oh man, you told me before recording that it was going to be a popper, and I had in my brain what they could have been. Oh wow!
I told Josh going in that from the looks of this casting call and everything that they seem to be doing, it's based on something that me and him absolutely loved. And yeah, the TV show Succession, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It forms the best comparison to what they seem to be doing here. And maybe you can argue it's only a casting call for now, various characters described, etc., and certain plot points, or what could be plot points. Maybe I'm adapting too much of a Succession thing to this, but you'll see what you think as we go. Because the game is set on the Bennett family, headed up by the tyrannical Henry Bennett, with various accents in the game described as being modern day or from modern day New England. The family comprises Layla, Dax, Bree, Christian, and Krista, with Henry himself described as an ambitious, manipulative, stubborn, narcissistic, unstable, and tyrannical individual with a legacy in jeopardy of ending with him. Literally Logan Roy.
Yeah.
Like literally the same thing.
I can see that.
Henry has yet to find a way to rectify this, wrestling with his own failures as a fortune builder as he tries to secure his family's legacy. Literally Logan Roy, isn't it, to be honest? To run down some of the kid characters, or what sound like the wider family members, because like I said, Layla, Dax, Bree, Christian, and Krista are all have the surname Bennett, according to this casting call. Layla is described as wanting to take the position of CEO to remold the family empire and help people, not exploit them. Dax is described as an egotistical a-hole. Bree wants to find a cure for the neurological damage she believes was inflicted when she was a child. Christian wants to escape the family and is sarcastic with a dry sense of humor. Roman Roy, literally. Krista is an orphaned small-town girl sacrificing her own dreams to raise her brother Mac. The other characters that are mentioned in the casting call are Ian, John, and Safna, described as described as someone who believes they deserve the fortune instead. Krista's brother is John, the brother who quit the criminal underworld, and Safna is a doctor who feels ostracized, and she's focused on revenge, all respectively. There are more rumors here to throw in, but thoughts on Far Succession?
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
You know, I loved Succession. I love those character archetypes. I mean, it's going to be tough to beat Succession, and it could just look like a terrible facsimile of Succession. But sure, I mean, you know, the Far Cry games, for as long as they've been a thing, have had these tyrannical villains, so why not? I know we kind of had a quote-unquote family with Far Cry 5, but to do it as a literal family with an empire and looking for potential heirs to take over the company, that could bring an element of decision-making into the gameplay as well, if you have to side with certain factions and support them or take them down. That could be quite cool. It is a strange one to pick from, but yeah.
I do wonder if you're playing as a new character who is then interacting with all these different people.
Yeah.
All these different, because the thing is, if you do the Far Cry 5 comparison, then you have different parts of that map that felt like their own siphoned off chunks. Like it was a character focused chunk, then you move on to the next bit, find out about the next character's backstory, do a bit more, and then unify in the middle. Far Cry 6's layout was way more scattered. It was all over the place. I felt like 5 was a bit more focused. But yeah, in terms of other rumors that have been doing the rounds for a good few years now, one is a 72-hour real-time time limit per each run of the game. So you would set out, do as much as you can within a 72-hour window, and then however that relates to the story. Maybe there are loads of different endings based on which character you're talking to, etc. The rumor portion now, not the casting call stuff. So we don't even know if this stuff is true. But that's an interesting wrinkle. Smaller land masses and more focused objectives have been rumored alongside that. So you would go on a run, you can see Ubisoft taking from the roguelike genre. Why not apply that to Far Cry? There's also a third-person option that's been mentioned that was on a hiring call for a coder to work on something that would be a toggle between first and third person. They played with third-person perspectives in Far Cry 6. When you use certain weapons, it goes to third person. And one rumor that's been shut down is that Cillian Murphy was going to be the main villain, which has been debunked. Dude from that thing with the caps. The show that he does.
Me?
No, what's the thing with the caps that I'm blanking on? The Peaky Blinders, that's the one.
Oh, yeah.
He's got like 6 seasons of it. I mean, I could have just said from Oppenheimer, but I've got the caps. The idea that Cillian Murphy was going to be in the game, that's been debunked, but the other stuff is still on the table. The idea of a 72-hour real-time runtime, smaller landmasses, third person, and this wider framing device of what I would say is very Succession adjacent.
Just to clarify, I know it's a rumor, so you might not be able to, like 72 hours real-time, hour time, not 72 hours Dead Rising time, which equated to like 6 hours of play.
Funnily enough, Dead Rising was used as a comparison in that leak, so yes, I would assume that if you stop the game, it doesn't keep ticking over.
Okay.
It's not like State of Decay, where I think they'd give you 72 hours to do as much as you can.
72 hours to do as much as you can. It feels like a long time.
Yeah.
If that's a smaller game for Ubisoft, it's scary. I don't know how I feel about that, but generally, I do think the idea of a time limit, it's going to be controversial, but I think it could be good. I mentioned Dead Rising there. I like the way it's implemented in that game. It does encourage more runs where you kind of perfect your route through the game to hit as many survivors as you can, hit as many mission objectives as you can. And I do think something like that would definitely add a sense of consequence to who you may or may not be siding with, or which factions that you spend time with, because you're missing a whole part. And it's like, okay, well, I literally can't talk to everyone, or I can't please everyone, so I need to focus in. That could be a nice little wrinkle, as is going through them all, as is third person. Yeah, I like the third person sections in Far Cry 6 because, like you said, not only were they in those moments where you use special weapons, but when you went into a friendly encampment, it also pulled back into a third person perspective. So it would be interesting to see them build upon that for a full third person mode. While I might not love a lot of the details that are rumored here, I do like that they're at least seemingly trying something different, which is what I've been wanting Far Cry to do for nigh on a decade now. When did Far Cry 4 release? 2014, literally a decade now. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how they're implemented, but I'd much prefer something a bit experimental and risky like this than in the Far Cry 6, which is still one of the most disappointing sequels I've ever played, man.
Really?
I love Far Cry's like my Ubisoft franchise. Like, that's the one I absolutely love. 2 and 3 did enough to just make it one of my ride or dies, but 6... I could not. I was just like, whatever you had, you've lost it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I liked playing. The thing is with 6, I thought it played the best, and I just liked it as this fast food. I sometimes call Ubisoft stuff fast food because it's like, you know exactly what you're getting, and it hits the spot. It doesn't last very long, and you're in and out. And with not in and out of the chain in America, but you know what I mean. For Far Cry 6 though, that felt like you've really stretched that Far Cry 3 template as far as possible.
Yeah.
And that whole thing of which became a tired talking point around Far Cry of like, we have a zany villain and they're going to get up in the camera thing and you're going to take them down. Far Cry 5 was like, what if we had a different zany villain in each corner of the map? And it's like, Far Cry 6 got away from that a bit. Like, you had Giancarlo Esposito, but it wasn't presented the same way as the dudes from 5. If anything, there wasn't enough Giancarlo in Far Cry 6 overall. So I'm curious, like you said, how do you evolve the gameplay side of it and give us a story worth caring about? If they think narrative is a big part of the Far Cry identity, I guess that's a whole other thing. Because if they're cribbing from Succession, you want to care about who takes over the company or whatever. And to me, like, having been around Far Cry since the beginning, I kind of miss when they had some of the abilities that were, I think, in the original, definitely on the Xbox version, because there's all the different versions of like Primal and whatever. But when you could like go prone, go upside down, shoot a dude through the floor of his own hut.
Yes.
I want to do things like that again. And I wonder whether they think about that in terms of like infiltration methods and different gameplay styles, or whether it is getting in on the branded identity of Far Cry, which post Far Cry 3 is just zany villain, lovely locations, etc.
I think it's got to be something new, like you said, that is all still indebted to Far Cry 3. I know Far Cry 6 plays much better in terms of it's more tight and
like
it feels
version.
better, but it's still, you know, we're still using a lot of the abilities and weapons that were founded in Far Cry 3 as your primary mode of combat. So this time around, you know, we've talked a lot about Assassin's Creed Shadows on this channel recently, and that is doing a lot to make me believe that Ubisoft is at least trying to evolve their major franchises. Like, I think Shadows, in terms of its gameplay and animation fidelity, looks way better than Valhalla. It feels like a next-gen Assassin's Creed. So I'm hoping that same mentality should it prove to be true in the final game, trickles down to one of their other biggest franchises, which is Far Cry, and we see that evolution. Yeah, they'll probably still take ideas that have proven to be successful in the previous games, but make them feel new, make them feel better than they ever have, and really focus on the way the systems interact, because I felt like 6, for as good as it was in terms of its game feel, was just so bloated with stuff. It kind of reminded me of a much worse version of Horizon Forbidden West, where it's like everything in here is quite good, but how does it coalesce? How do we intersect all these systems together? And I want them to do that, and maybe they'll be able to do that with this new cast and the time limit, and especially, and I hope this is true, that smaller, more focused world that they might able to be create. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to play a space that's as memorable as 2, 3. And even 5 to an extent, you know, I just thought 6 got way too big, too much landmass, a lot of it just nondescript. Get back to like making it a believable world that these characters inhabit.
Well, that's been the whole Ubisoft Bloat thing. I feel like obviously it takes so many years to put these games together, but Assassin's Creed Shadows feels like it's addressing that to a degree, where you have specific levels that you're repeatedly going back into them. Like the whole thing with AC Shadows is that it's more season based, and the level just looks differently depending on when you play it. And I wonder if that's their answer to this stuff. Like, we had the bloat era for most of the 2010s, and it reached its absolute zenith in the likes of Far Cry 6 or AC Valhalla or whatever. Like, I would love to see a heat map of where players went in those games, because I doubt it was the majority of those land masses.
That would be interesting.
Because I mean, they'll know that stuff too. But I wonder, you know, you see the successes the likes of Naughty Dog have had with in Last of Us 2 and Uncharted 4, like semi-open world spaces. That's kind of becoming a Sony trait. Like God of War has it too. And I wonder if that is actually the future of the open world genre to a point. If you want to have the production level high and the narrative level high. And then, like I said, Ubisoft love looking at what works and going like, we'll have a bit of that. Yeah. And so I wonder if they are looking at that and going like, yeah, let's have these more focused areas. The game is ostensibly run-based, even though it's 72 hours of in-game time or whatever, but you're then encouraged to maximize those spaces and discover different ways to get around them. And I don't know, why not have more playability instead of just, here's a giant space you'll barely interact with?
Yeah, I could go for that. I mean, I mentioned at the very start of this podcast that I'm going back through Fallout 4, and I was surprised at the smallness of the map, but in love with the density of it, just how detailed every random area is in that map, how many places there are to go into, how much it feels like, you know, a memorable place. I played that game, this is my second time through it. I played it for 100 hours back in 2015, and I couldn't believe how much I remembered when it came to just the minutiae of buildings. I remember going through them a decade ago, right? Because even the most nondescript of them managed to make an impact with something, whether it was the art design or the architecture or whatever. And like, I think of something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I know was a little while ago now. That was a game that I wanted to jump into because I thought this time period and this setting should be amazing. I want to explore these cities, explore these areas, live in it a little bit. And then I realized the reality of the size of that world was just running through a lot of foresty areas, going through a lot of trees without much of a draw distance. And all I remember really from my own, admittedly short for an Assassin's Creed game, 25 hours with that title, is like killing balls in the woods and stuff. And I'm like, no, but the like, if it was as small, more densely packed, it would have made more of an impact. And same with Valhalla. Like, I love the English countryside in that game, but I can't remember much else about it.
No, you know? I think the future of the idea of a big playable space is still to retain some focus and because I think we've got past the technical showpiece side of it, where it's like, look, we've created a whole world like that. I still think Skyrim feels like a whole world, and that's from 2011.
Yeah.
And I feel like the evolution of the open world genre or whatever needs to, well, you can have it be this more limited space that feels more curated, feels more authored, and just twinned with Far Cry's gameplay. Like, if you bring back stuff, like that series has such a big impetus on infiltrating enemy camps and stuff like that. If you're going to make that feel fresh, then maybe your character's built a different way or whatever it is, or you're going up against different main characters behind it. I just think there's a way to keep all that fresh, and I think Far Cry 6, they had like middling sales, proved that people are at the breaking point with it.